Today we're talking about an unbelievably stupid story of charity that really shows the brain rot of crypto bros. This man's quest to simply donate money is going to lead him to space. But before it does, I have to say, normally I am against scrutinizing charity. I think all charity, however you give, wherever you give, however much you give, it's great. But occasionally, the motivations are so gross, the methods so outrageous that it's worth making an exception. And that's what we're doing today. Today, we're talking about this man, Eric Finman, and we're talking about his quest to save a school in Africa with cryptocurrency. But to understand the full lore, we have to start with who Eric is. Actually, I'll let him introduce who he is.
I just want to start by saying I love being me.
Wait. Eric, no. We want to know who you are.
I love being myself. It's a pretty sweet deal.
No. Not who do you love. Who are you?
Yeah, I really love being myself. It's such a joy.
No, Eric, tell me what you do.
Hi, I'm Eric.
Finally.
I'm the world's youngest Bitcoin millionaire. I made it in Silicon Valley, and I've accomplished a lot in my life already. But now, I'm leaving big tech to fight for free speech.
Okay, those were two clips of Eric from like 7 years ago and then from just a year ago. And as you can see, he hasn't changed that much in that time. He still loves himself quite a bit. But in 2021, he made waves launching the Freedom Phone, which is the ad you just saw and which got a ton of media attention, but was pretty much a commercial flop after the Freedom Phone's core promise of privacy failed inspection.
And the chipset inside of it, this isn't the product of someone who actually cares about privacy. It's the product of someone who's trying to take advantage of people who aren't as tech savvy.
So that was my first introduction to Eric. He's clearly a guy who knows how to get media attention and market himself, but he kind of lacks that follow through. Now, recently I saw him again on Fox News Business, and this time he was talking about another company he's part of, which also kind of sounded sketchy. It's a TikTok competitor called Lemotive, which in of itself is fine, but Eric claimed in this video that it has hundreds of millions of users on this app, and frankly, I had never heard of it.
No, we have hundreds of millions of users, so we have an amazing, user growth.
Now look, the fact I hadn't heard of this app is no big deal, but I went to my phone because I wanted to know more. I downloaded this app expecting hundreds of millions of users. Instead, everything I was seeing was like family member levels of engagement, like 3 to 5 likes per post. Your mom, grandma, and dad. It was a ghost town. Hardly anyone is on this app. So again, this is my second red flag. Once again, he kind of over promises, under delivers. But then comes the mother lode of all stories. Eric starts talking about all his achievements. And one of them is when he talks about a project he worked on in Ghana to donate money.
Let me ask you about that project. I saw you done some work in Ghana, and you just did something that's really historic. I think this is important because one thing I love about the definance revolution is that it's going to help people who would never really, people in industries and countries that would never really have a chance in a traditional global banking system.
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, we did a crypto version of Starlink.
So it starts off pretty normal. He's on national television, and he's talking about how he donated money. This is what people talk about when they talk about cryptocurrency, banking the unbanked, saving Africa. But then, as he gave details, I realized literally none of this is necessary.
I launched a satellite a few years ago, and we put a crypto wallet on there. I believe it's the only satellite with a crypto wallet, and we were able to beam down to a UNICEF school, an all-girls UNICEF school in Ghana, with the help of a member of the Ghanan government at the ground. We were able to ship them an antenna. They built it as a school project. It was amazing.
Okay, wait, just a second. You're telling me you launched a satellite, put a crypto wallet on that satellite, and built an antenna to receive that? You had to involve the government all to send money? Isn't there a better way? If you're already going to be shipping an antenna, couldn't you have shipped cash? And the punchline is maybe if it was millions of dollars, it would make sense. You can't just ship millions of dollars. It was $1,000. He donated $1,000 to this school in Ghana. And not just any $1,000. He donated $1,000 worth of a random crypto coin called Metal.
And then literally with no internet, they were able to beam down cryptocurrency right down to them.
By the way, I like it how he passes it off as some big achievement of like, hey, we sent them money even though they didn't have internet. But that's not even true. They did have internet because you built them an antenna. You could have sent them the money that you spent on antennas, satellites, and talking to the Ghana government. You could have sent it to them. But why do it that way when you can build and send a satellite to space?
We were able to ship them an antenna. They built it as a school project.
I like how he says, like, yeah, they just set up this antenna. It's like a fun school project. Like, was it? I don't volunteer my free time as a Dish Network technician, but maybe that's just me. Maybe I don't know what the kids are doing in school these days. But by the way, this isn't even the wildest part because already way too many steps, right? But remember that Eric paid them in a cryptocurrency which is not used by locals at all, or really anyone. So guess what happens next?
A friend's company of mine, Yellow Card, he runs the largest crypto exchange in Africa, Yellow Card, and he was able to, on the ground, exchange the money for local vendors.
Okay, what have we done here? After everything, all of it, the satellite, the antenna, the government, you've literally had to send a guy with cash. You've had to do the thing you were trying to avoid doing the entire time. You had to send them cash to exchange the cryptocurrency. What is the achievement here? You're just sending the cash with like 12 extra steps. But even worse, he tries to make it seem like this is the wonders of crypto and space.
It was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. They were able to fix their roof. They didn't even have lunch tables. They were eating their food on the ground in the dirt, and they were able to get wood for lunch tables. I mean, this is the amazing economy of space.
No, Eric, this isn't the amazing economy of space. This is the fake philanthropist grift. We've seen it thousands of times before. You just give small amounts of cash to poor countries, but when you do, you make sure you bring a camera and you make a media tour out of it while you're at it. As I said, wouldn't say anything because, charity is mostly a net benefit no matter the reason. But this story was just so wild. The lengths they went to make this seem revolutionary was so ludicrous that I had to make an exception.
This is the amazing economy of space.
Corruption, hypocrisy, greed. What the Pandora Papers expose about the super rich is that it's not about whether you're Democrat or Republican. It's not about whether you're black or white. It's not about whether you're from the North or South. What it's about is whether you have $50 million to put in an offshore bank account and not pay taxes on. Because it turns out we have 2.94 terabytes to prove what I could have told you in about 3 seconds.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
Listen, guys, welcome to the $10 million studio. You know the saying, okay? We have been playing checkers while the super rich have been playing offshore tax evasion. I'm not going to go into all the details of the Pandora Papers. As you guys probably know, it's the third installment from the ICIJ, International Consortium. Bunch of journalists working super hard to do a ton of work that you should go read the original source material of. I'm just going to tell you the big high-level takeaways, okay? Because I'm not here to read 2.94 terabytes for you, okay? I'm going to be here a long time if I try to do that. Instead, what I'm going to tell you are the high-level details. And then, guys, do your civic duty and go read it. Or do what everyone else does and don't. But I think you should know this. Basically, the Pandora Papers is just a continuation of what we've kind of known for a while from these ICIJ guys. As I said, third installment, Panama Papers, Paradise Papers. Maybe you've heard of it. A bunch of people lost their jobs. A journalist even got fired for leaking this information. It just exposed the super rich did sort of what we knew they were doing all along. They aren't paying taxes, ladies and gentlemen. That's right, left or right, apparently, when you pass a certain threshold of wealth, you become violently allergic to paying taxes. Because it's not just the guys on the right who are all about low taxes that aren't paying. It's everybody. It's not just the people who are for corruption. You know, those pro-corruption politicians that always come out there and put their platform on pro-corruption. It's not just those guys that are hiding their money illegally. It's actually sort of everybody. Take, for instance, this man, the Czech Prime Minister Andrej Babis. He promised to fight tax evasion and increase transparency. And surprise, surprise, the man evaded taxes himself. Apparently, in 2009, he bought a French estate through shell companies in tax havens. But that's okay, because when in France, buy an offshore French estate. I don't know. This man's so rich, they're even calling it a chateau at this point, dude. You're not even in a mansion. It's a chateau. Of course, he didn't disclose it, didn't appear on his taxes. So they ask him about it, and he declines to answer. But it's not just the Czech prime minister who sucks. Turns out everyone sort of does. Jordan's king, Abdullah, apparently also is a guy who promised to end corruption. That's the funniest thing a politician could ever say. They always end up, surprise, surprise, corrupt. Anyways, apparently while Daddy USA was pouring financial aid in, he was funneling it back out to a bunch of property. Yeah, while we were spending money on him, he was spending money on us, accumulating a luxury hotel empire to rival the Hiltons. I mean, this man was spending money like no tomorrow, all the while getting up on his pedestal and preaching how people need to stop being corrupt. I mean, how do these people honestly live? I really do believe. I mean, I know this is crazy, this is tinfoil, this is not true, but I believe that politicians are a different breed of human. How can you stand up on a stage and say, hey, we need to stop tax evasion, we need to stop corruption, all the while you got the guys going out and buying these secret tax haven properties for you? It's completely insane. And if you'd like proof of that, we also have the Kenyan president as well, flexing the weird lies that only politicians seem uniquely capable of. Listen to what this joker said. It is time to get tough on those who seek to use positions of power for their own personal gain. This guy said, this is the anti-corruption hero of Kenya. Now, of course, this man who's against using his personal position of power for personal gain somehow is the richest man in all of Kenya, which is kind of hilarious. You can see it right here. He's literally the Bill Gates over there. But yeah, he's against corruption. And of course, it turns out, surprise, surprise, the man is buying up offshore islands, offshore private villas, you know, probably some chateaus to get in there with it. It's like they can't help themselves. They're incapable when they get in positions of power of just, I put my hand in the cookie jar. But finally, we get to see them unmasked for what they are. That's why these files are so important and why these people are absolutely crapping themselves right now. I mean, look, let me be honest with you guys. People like this, people with this much money, they don't have a lot of problems. Just gonna, anyone who told you that money doesn't solve any problems, it's not true. They're sitting there on their little French chateau drinking some wine. But you know what does make them actually worry? The one thing that does is this kind of stuff. When the rest of the world gets to see them with their pants down and gets to see once and for all how corrupt these jokers are, left, right, front, center. And honestly, it's unbelievable to me that these people expect the rest of us to pay our fair share of taxes, while these guys with way more money can't even do it. Even the politicians don't pay their taxes. The politicians who preach at you of paying your fair share, or say that the super wealthy need to pay their fair share while they own like 20 private islands. I mean, I don't want to be too doomer about this, but I really do not believe that many people in this report are going to go to jail. Maybe that's a little cynical, but it just always seems like these guys always slink out untouched. All of a sudden, you know, because when you're rich, is it really a crime? Is it really a problem? And you know what I think is most telling about these types of investigations, which I really do believe are deeply important, right? But what I think is that a lot of times not much happens from these. Sure, a few people's heads might roll. Yeah, like, you know, people might lose their job and stuff, but very, very rarely do any of these people go to jail for what they've done. Very rarely do we ever arrest anybody. Why? Because suddenly when it's a super rich person having to deal with another super rich person and locking them up, all of a sudden that sounds crazy. It's crazy to think that we'd ever criminally punish any of these people for what they've done. They're sort of the legal crooks, if you will. But meanwhile, you know, a poor person steals from a gas station, everybody loses their mind, right? That's what we got to crack down on. Throw that guy in jail for 2,000 years. But all of a sudden, you steal money from the government. You steal money that way, this offshore way. You're rich. Dude, don't worry about it, dude. We got your back. It's so telling. The super rich protect the super rich. That's just the way of the world. So I'm just going to go out and say it. My takeaway from this whole thing was that, yes, the super rich are not paying their taxes. Surprise, surprise. But even more than that, I think what this really exposes is that this isn't about whether you voted red or blue, whether your boy's going to show up on these tax havens. It's about how much money you got on your checkbook. So I don't know if people are ever going to wake up and realize that the game is rigged, but it is. Because the same thing we saw them doing in 2016 is the same thing we find them doing a few years later, and it's the same thing we find them doing today. So if you think this is going to stop, I don't know, you might have another thing coming. But I do have to give a huge congratulations to the journalists who got this published. This is true journalist work. I am very proud that we still have people who are this willing to put their lives on the line of releasing this stuff, because it is absolutely dangerous to leak this sensitive of documents about this powerful of people. And the fact that a team of journalists got together and worked on this stuff, I think is a true testimony that we do still have some hope. I mean, yes, it is a little black pill, but the fact this stuff still gets out there, still does have some impact, is at least what warms my heart at night. So that's basically it. I just want to do a quick reaction to this because I saw it go live. I knew you guys would wonder what the internet detective thinks about corruption at this magnitude. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, now that I'm a big shot daily YouTuber, I decided it was time to come clean on all the times I've been wrong. I know you're thinking, never? No, I've been wrong one time. 2020, there was a little bit of a blip in the error of my ways when I told Caleb Maddox that he was wrong. If you guys don't know who Caleb Maddox is, he's an 18-year-old life coach. He's got it all figured out. And when he told me that Reddit videos were, in his words, the greatest opportunity of our era, I said, are you joking?
Prepare yourself. Greatest income opportunity of our generation. Reddit videos. It's the opportunity of our era.
And honestly, he kind of fled away from the internet. I actually feel bad about it to this day. I reach out to him daily saying, Caleb, we need the YTA method back. But the truth is, jokes aside, I think he was actually right. Looking at all the big daily YouTubers, you got PewDiePie, KSI, a lot of I's. You got Video Game Donkey, okay? All these daily YouTubers who are crushing it right now in the views. What do they all do? Reddit video. Actually, Video Game Donkey doesn't do Reddit videos. That defeats my rule. But the point is, a lot of these big YouTubers, they do Reddit videos. Why? Because it makes damn good content. You get content to react to. You guys get to interact with me. I get to interact with you. So because of that, I've seen the light. Look, going daily, things have changed around here in the Coffeezilla $10 million studio. A lot of things are going to be changing in the future too. But I've really taken a new look at a lot of things that I used to make fun of. And Reddit videos is one of them. So, if you'd like to participate in a new segment on our show, you can go here. It's Coffeezilla_GG. Here it is, boys. Right now, it's an unofficial Reddit. I'm trying to talk with the moderator who created this to try to make it the official Reddit. But anyways, this is where you're gonna post. And you know what? To kick it off, just so you guys, just to give the people who created this a little bit of a head start, I'm getting everyone who's not a bot free Reddit gold. That's right. Gold. Boom. Gold for you, sir. Gold for you. Gold for you. Coffeezilla versus Dean Graziosi. A mindset coach's reaction. We'll give you that gold for that. Listen, it won't be always this easy to get gold, ladies and gentlemen. But for now, it is. Look at this. Gold, gold. Some of these are bots. Some of these posts have been deleted. But look. Undead Marine. Hey. Coffeezilla featured on Baller Busters IG. Gold. Another one. Gold. You guys get the idea. Even the comments. Steve Jobs mentored me, but actually just an honor doctor. Hey, gold. Now that is the exact kind of reckless Reddit gold gifting you can expect if you join the unofficial, but now official, subreddit of Coffeezilla, Coffeezilla_GG. Join now. Submit your memes. I have a feeling this is going to just turn into people making fun of me for being a hobbit, for having a large head. I don't know. But I think it'll be fun anyway. I think it'll be a fun time. Now, thank you for sitting through that little pitch fest. Now let's talk about Caleb Maddox again. Because yes, he's a man of wisdom now. I realized I was wrong about him. In fact, not only is he a man of wisdom, he's actually back. He took a little siesta after our talk, a break, but he's back in action and he's better than ever, ladies and gentlemen. He started something called Maximum Wage, okay? So let's listen in and figure out what's going on.
Congratulations, you have officially finished the mentality portion of Maximum. You know when people they graduate college, there's this big gathering, everyone fills the stadium, they all wear their cap.
Let me guess, Maximum Wage is just like that.
Well, I honestly believe like this is just as big of a deal. This is a bigger deal than that because what you guys learned in this, what it set you guys up for, how.
Oh my gosh. It's not. It's not as big of a deal as college. What's this kid's name? Ryan or something? Ryan? Come on, Ryan. Get it together. Next, you're going to be comparing it to Harvard.
How it set you guys up to make maximum wage is so much more important than anything you could ever learn in college. The life skills that you'll learn are way more important than anything you'll ever learn in college. Truthfully, like he just said, I really believe that what you guys learn at maximum wage is more valuable than spending 30 years at Harvard.
Hold on, let's go back. I just have to hear that again.
That what you guys learn at maximum wage is more valuable than spending 30 years at Harvard.
He's learned nothing. Guys, I thought Caleb Maddox picked something up from the whole YTA disaster, but he's saying that this new class, that class, greatest opportunity of our era. This class, more important than 30 years at Harvard. This is a guy who's never been to Harvard, but it's more important than 30 years at Harvard. I'm so sick of this kind of, look, I know college is too expensive, but these people are ridiculous. Now, that's not the only Caleb Maddox take that I was kind of surprised by. There's actually another. Caleb, I gotta say, even though you were right about Reddit, what is this? The real pandemic is the spreading of a victim mentality. Caleb Maddox. If he wasn't so young, I think this would be funnier. I think we all understand that Caleb Maddox is definitely approaching a point in his life where he's going to realize a lot of the stuff he said when he was younger was dumb. So I'm not going to fault him too hard for this. But Caleb...
Just a moment of truth. There's really no going back here. As soon as I put this on, it's game over. The beard is gone forever.
Yo, what up? Boys, we're back looking fresh. As you guys know, a few weeks ago, I auctioned off this beard for charity.
This monstrosity ain't coming off until we get one of these internet marketing companies up in my DMs.
Hey, side note, I have to interject here. Sorry. Where'd my tan go? What the hell happened to my tan? It's only been a few weeks, baby. This is pathetic. If you've seen my tan, please report it. Please email me. Anyways, back to the video. Who came but the perfect sponsor? You know, it wasn't some big dog from the shaving industrial complex. It was a mom and pop shop, a company with integrity, with culture. And that company, of course, is Pacific Shaving Company. Guys, you have to understand. Before this, I was working with like a $2 razor from Walmart. So to upgrade at this level, you know, get this caffeinated shaving cream they gave me. They sent me the works, you know, they gave me the aftershave balm. And let me say, it was a delight to shave with these products. But more importantly, we gave the money, $1,500 to Rescue America, a human trafficking charity. It's the favorite charity of the groom at the wedding that I was attending. I gave it to him as a present. And, you know, I'm just really proud Coffeezilla was able to, you know, do this. And if you'd like to support more things like this, please go to pacificshaving.com. You want a great shave. I can vouch for them. And they're surprisingly affordable. So go check them out, pacificshaving.com, or follow them on Instagram, Pacific Shaving. Now, without further ado, let's get into this. At the moment you guys have all been waiting for. Paid dating apps are for simps. What? You say? No way. Hey, I'm just trying to get more matches. I'm just trying to get out there. Well, I've got a presentation for you today. I put it together. It took me a lot of hours. It's a slideshow. Paid dating apps are for simps according to math. Now, first of all, what is a simp? It means a guy. Hold on, let's move this screen. It means a guy that is overly desperate for women, especially if she's a bad person, or expressed disinterest in him, which he continues to obsess over. Sorry, guys, about that. That is an Urban Dictionary definition. But I think we get the point. Now, are you a simp if you pay for a dating site? Well, the evidence is clear. I crunched the numbers. I did the math. Our chart says that, 21% of you are definitely simps. 34% are the opposite of pimps. 10% it is assured. And 32% you're almost certainly a simp. Okay? So those are the numbers. Don't argue with me. Hey, look at me. I didn't invent math. You know what I mean? I didn't invent numbers.
Ask Archimedes why you're a simp. I mean, don't bring it up with me. That's my point. Don't get mad at me. I'm just a humble servant, you know. This is just simple calculus, okay? You're a simp. Now, why is that? You're going to ask, Stephen, why? No, you're showing me charts, all these incredible numbers, but why? Well, let's go through the logic here. The logic is when you pay for a dating site, you're simping for Match Group Incorporated, who has a monopoly over these dating sites. I bet you guys didn't know that. I didn't know that before getting into this. Match Group Inc. owns 74% of the total monthly unique visitors to the top 6 online dating websites, and that's because they own Tinder. They own Match.com. They own OkCupid. They own Hinge. They own Plenty of Fish. They own all these sites. Now let's talk about the scam itself, boys, because I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Steven, is it really that big of a deal? What did they really do that's so bad? I just want my Tinder Gold. Am I really a simp for wanting Tinder Gold? Well, let's get into it. Match.com was sued by the FTC. And here's what Match Group, what their scam was, okay? So obviously there's a lot of bots on these dating sites. Everyone knows that. But what Match Group would do is they would have a flagged account, probably a bot, right? And it's liking people left and right. And what Match Group would do is they'd send you an email advertising that you have a match, right? This is what they would do. And basically the idea is you have to pay in order to read what they sent you, okay? Now, Match.com knows ahead of time that this is probably a bot, but they would send you an ad anyways and say, hey, sign up for our premium subscription, whatever model, in order to see this person, right? See who likes you. And so you'd go and you'd sign up for it, and then the match would disappear because they don't want to advertise a bot. Now, based on this, they paid for 499,000 subscriptions within 24 hours of receiving an advertisement touting a fraudulent communication. So 499,000 subscriptions, that might not sound like a lot, but it's an ungodly amount of money that they're making from this scam. And when people complain, this is my favorite part, okay? This is honestly my favorite part. Match.com would apparently say to people, hey, please be assured Match.com does not send members misleading notifications. No. Emails or winks professing romantic interest. We have too much respect for our members to ever compromise their trust. Oh, the irony. Too much respect for you, dude. Oh, this is who you're simping for. These people. Too much respect. Now, how much did they sell out their respect for? Well, according to a conservative estimate I made, they made roughly $17 million from accounts they knew were bots. That's how much they made in subscriptions from bots. But that's not all my evidence, because next I want to talk about the guarantee scam. And this is an even bigger scam. So the guarantee scam was something Match Group did, and it was their little bundle here. And apparently you got the match guarantee. See that, guys? See that right there? The 6-month match guarantee. Ooh, wow. Amazing. Now, you're thinking, okay, the match guarantee apparently is something where, okay, if you haven't found someone special within 6 months, we'll give you an extra 6 months free. So you sign up. It's an expensive dating site. Let's go back a little bit. $19.99 per month for 6 months. That's $120. That's expensive. But they're saying, look, you signed up for 6 months. We'll give you an extra 6 months free. Now, that's their little match guarantee. But the match guarantee comes with some strings. Comes with some strings you have to know about. That you don't know about if you don't click Learn More. Now, if you click Learn More, you discover it's not as easy as you thought to get these little things, okay? So if you click Learn More, you get this, which is during your 6-month subscription, you must create a truthful Match.com profile with a primary photo and keep it visible to the public. Respond to or initiate email communication with at least 5 unique Match.com members each month through the Match.com service, and then comply with all of the Match.com guarantee program rules below. Look at this gigantic wall of text. You're expected to read that, because if you don't read it, you're going to not get the guarantee. You know what I mean? Because this is all the rules you have to follow in order to get this thing. So you think you're signing up for $120, free 6 months? No. Now, on top of that, let's say you get to the end of the 6 months and you think, because you haven't read all these rules, these little rules, all these qualifying rules, you got to send a qualifying email, all this stuff. You think you're just the program's gonna end. No. They're gonna auto-renew you for the 6 months without telling you.
So not only do you not get the free 6 months, but then they auto renew you for another $120. Now, to show you how misleading this was for people, okay, let's look at the actual numbers. Let's look at the numbers right here, boys. According to the FTC, people purchased 2.5 million subscriptions here. Now, of those 2.5 million that received subscriptions that should be eligible for the 6 month, renew, the 6 month renew after they don't get a match or whatever, only 32,000 actually got the renew. So 1% of people eligible for this free match guarantee actually got the guarantee. Now, in contrast with that, over 1 million people who purchased the guarantee got rebilled for an additional 6 month package. So 40% of their subscribers got rebilled for that $120. Now, due to this misleading guarantee, how much did Match.com make? $120 million. Million, guys. Are you kidding me? This is what these guys are making. So, what's my conclusion here? Well, my conclusion is as follows. Match Group, the monopoly over all the dating apps, made $137 million from fraudulent practices. And what does it show you? They want to get subscribers more than they actually care about you getting a match. And back to what a simp is, right? What is a simp? Let's go back a few slides. What's a simp? A guy who's overly desperate for women, especially if she's a bad person or expressed disinterest in him, and which he continues to obsess over. Now, I'm bending the definition a little bit because obviously we're calling a company as you can simp for a company. But I'm going to say, yes, you can. These guys keep paying for these dating sites that show clearly that all they want is for them to keep paying, and they're not necessarily going to get you these matches. So look, what am I saying here? Am I saying to stop using the dating site? No, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, men, have a little respect for yourself. When somebody defrauds a bunch of people like you because who are just looking for love, and they show repeatedly that they want profits over matches, they're being sued for it. If you continue to support them, you're a simp. It's what you are. It's what you are, and you can take it however you want. But regardless, guys, of whether you're a married man, whether you're someone who pays for these dating apps, or whether you're just a freemium user, whether you're not dating at all, tell me in the description box below. What do you think? Do you think you can simp for a company? And if so, do you think Match Group is worth simping for? And let me know what you think in the comment section below. Guys, once again, big thanks to our sponsor today, PacificShaving.com. Go follow them. Go buy some razors, some shaving cream. Support the channel. Support some charities. I love you guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for all the support lately. Alex Mashinsky, creator of a multi-billion-dollar fraud known as Celsius, has been arrested. I can't express how big of a deal this is, not just for this channel, which has been covering this for over a year, but mostly for the victims. Here's what some of them said about this fraud only a few months ago.
So this was an absolute fraud from the beginning. I mean, it turns out that a lot of these businesses that they claim to be propping up Celsius were completely fraudulent. From what I've seen from the Examiner, more and more it looks like it was just a textbook case of a Ponzi scheme.
I don't care if it was a Ponzi scheme from the very beginning or the very end. It still was a Ponzi scheme.
It doesn't matter if he meant to start a Ponzi scheme, right? But the second you got into those circumstances, it becomes fraud.
They're basically losing money from the very start of the company, and they're literally lying in front of everyone's faces saying, yeah, oh, it's totally fine. Yeah, you could totally keep our money in here. Yeah, I would totally invest more if I could. As they're currently at that same time withdrawing funds as they're literally on camera lying to everyone's faces.
He made a lot of egregious claims on his Twitter, on his website, on his podcasts he would do, claiming if Celsius ever went bankrupt, all the customers would get all of their funds back. You know, there's tweets of him saying that. And as a CEO of a company, you would take that word at face value. You would believe him when he says your coins are going to come back to you. And now that everything's coming to light and showing that essentially what he was running is a Ponzi, I do believe he should face jail time, and the people that were also involved with it that were enabling that behavior.
Well, it looks like that's exactly what's happening. Alex Mashinsky is facing serious prison time. So let's get into the meat of these allegations. Today, the DOJ, SEC, CFTC, and FTC all released indictments against Alex Mashinsky. Celsius itself was fined $4.7 billion, and 7 criminal charges were alleged against Alex Mashinsky himself, including securities fraud, wire fraud, and market manipulation. Now, in total, Mashinsky faces up to 115 years as a max sentence, but of course, the sentence will likely be much lower. Even so, though, Mashinsky is 57 years old, so there's a chance he will be in prison for the rest of his life because of Celsius. And it's not just him being charged either. Roni Cohen-Pavan, the chief revenue officer at Celsius, is also facing criminal charges. And the reasons for that aren't surprising. As we've stated over and over and over, Celsius had been secretly using customer deposits for years to buy their own stupid cell token and make the price go up, which benefited insiders like Alex Mashinsky and Roni Cohen-Pavan, who sold their cell tokens and became very rich. $42 million for Alex and $3.6 million for the lawyer. And most of that money was the direct result of lying to their end customer. Over and over, they lied to cover up the fact that they were the main buyers of Cell Token and main sellers. They lied about their ICO, making $50 million. They lied about giving 80% of their revenues back to Celsius customers. They lied about Alex Mashinsky not selling Cell Token. They lied about Celsius being profitable when they knew they were bleeding cash. And look, I could go on, but there are 71 mentions of the word false in this report, so we'd be here all day. The point is this: Alex Mashinsky and his co-conspirators lied in order to get more people to deposit money while they cashed out this Cell Token. They knew they were insolvent, they knew their business wasn't working, and still they continued to pretend it was. They promoted this Ponzi scheme built on unrealistic returns, and when it all crashed, they made sure their money was out. And for those of you who've been watching this channel over the last year, this won't come as a surprise. As I said, we've been covering a lot of these allegations, but I also want to be clear that some people have been calling out Celsius even before we did. A fellow investigator, Dirty Bubble Media, has been calling out Celsius for months before anyone else knew they were insolvent. And I wanted to speak to him to ask how he knew so early and what we can learn from it and what this indictment means.
My name is James Block. I write Dirty Bubble Media, a blog focused on fraud in the cryptocurrency space. To be quite honest, I thought that Celsius was a fraud very early in my encounters with it, within a few days of actually learning about the project. And really what clued me into it was learning about its founder and CEO, Alex Mashinsky's history. He made a lot of big claims about his past successes, the companies he had founded. And what I found pretty quickly was that he had lied, or at least grossly exaggerated, pretty much everything that he told people about what he had done before founding Celsius. And in my experience, when someone lies that much and that often, they don't stop lying.
What does this indictment represent to you?
This indictment's a vindication for me, really. It kind of confirms what we knew for a long time. And, I expected this to happen. I don't know if it took longer than I expected, but it took a year to the day of them filing for bankruptcy for them to charge him with fraud.
Thanks for coming on. I think you helped a lot of people. I, for one, am just grateful that the victims are finally seeing some form of justice in this and that outright crimes are being treated as such. And so it's with great pleasure that I want to wrap up today's show in a bit of a unique way. Today, I'm announcing the addition of Alex Mashinsky to the Wall of Shame. As you guys know, when you appear on this show and then face charges, we will name you and we will shame.
Hey guys, I want to talk real quick about the David Icke, Brian Rose, London Real situation. Their interview just got taken off YouTube, banned from YouTube, and I want to give my take on it. My channel has obviously fought battles of free speech in the past, not with YouTube, but with private individuals over what I could say, what I couldn't say. So I have a strong opinion on this matter. I thought I'd give it to you guys first before I make a separate video where I basically explain why I think the David Icke London Real interview was an absolute garbage fest of misinformation and dangerous ideas that were totally left unchallenged by Brian Rose.
Is there a virus?
There is no COVID-19. It doesn't exist.
So I think the interview was a complete failure, but YouTube's reaction to shutting it down, I have a totally different take on it. And I think it distracts from how bad the interview was and how stupid the interview was. Because it's now become a free speech issue, right? Because it's been censored. Yeah, it's been censored. They don't want you to know the truth. And my take on this is that YouTube shouldn't have done it. YouTube, for two reasons. For one, for pragmatic reasons. Two, philosophical reasons. I disagree with it. But I understand YouTube's perspective, and I think a lot of people are missing YouTube's perspective on the whole thing. They don't understand, hey, why is YouTube suddenly banning this guy? All they hear is about the banning, and they don't know the wider context of the situation. So let me give you that wider context real quick. So the reason YouTube specifically taking down videos that try to link 5G and coronavirus, the reason for that, the real reason, is that there were arson attacks in Britain of 5G towers by people who believed that there was a link here, right? So some conspiracy theorists, of whom David Icke is one of them, were promoting this idea that 5G was causing the coronavirus. And then people who heard that and believed it said, oh, well, let me go stop 5G, right? Because if 5G is hurting all these people, I'm gonna stop 5G and try to help people. And so they set fire to these towers, which is a huge problem. You can't have your society committing arson attacks based on crackpot theories. And so, somewhat understandably, YouTube is trying to find a way to limit their own liability. They're like, we don't want to be the cause of the spread of these crazy ideas. Okay, that's their perspective. I think a lot of people didn't know that real world violent actions were taken in the real world. Now, to my knowledge, no one was hurt, but people could have been. Let's be clear. When you set fire to something, you don't know whether someone's going to be hurt or not. So real lives have been impacted by the words of these conspiracy theorists, okay? So that's number one, because free speech applies up until it violates someone else's rights. So there is a bit of a question mark of, you know, when you're promoting ideas that cause real world events to take place that could harm people, does your free speech still apply? That's a philosophical question, because obviously David Icke is not telling his followers to go burn 5G towers. Although he sort of dances around the topic, he says he doesn't want violence to be committed against people.
You know, I am personally absolutely anti-violence against people.
But he also says, you know, make of this what you will, 5G will end the world.
And if 5G continues and reaches where they want to take it, human life as we've known it is over. So what people decide to do about that is up to them.
So there's a question of how much he promotes it, but I think it is on the edge. I mean, I think anyone could see with this context that this is on the edge of speech. But my personal take is that YouTube censoring London Real, censoring David Icke is going to cause more problems than it fixes, because like I said, it turns this into a free speech issue, which really this should be an issue of mocking this nut job for his crazy ideas. Instead, it becomes, oh, the big man is trying to censor David Icke. So I think tactically, from YouTube's own reasoning on it, where they don't want this conspiracy spreading to more people, this is failing already. Censorship usually does fail because the Barbra Streisand effect, most people know it. If you try to shut something down, people think that there must be some truth to it and they want to watch it more. So I think YouTube's attempts failed there, just pragmatically. But also philosophically, you have to deal with the fact that when you allow free speech, if you believe in free speech, and you may not agree with me on this topic, doing the work that I do, I have a pretty strong sense of free speech. So I think that unless people like David Icke are outright saying, go commit acts of violence, go do these things, they're largely protected. I mean, it just is what it is. Philosophically, I think they should be allowed to say what they say. And I also am of the belief that places like YouTube, they don't really have a valid competitor in the market. They are kind of a marketplace of ideas. I kind of think YouTube's a public utility. So even though it is a private company, most people say the private company has the right to do whatever it wants. It can censor whoever it wants. I think your platform like YouTube, you have a monopoly. And when you have a monopoly and you're providing video sharing, which is basically, I would argue, a public utility in today's society, I don't think YouTube should have the right to be like, oh yeah, we just don't like you, we don't like what you're saying, and be able to shut them down on that. Unless you can really draw a link between violence and the person, and a clear link, I think if you're like me, if you believe that people should have free speech, you have to accept the fact that some of the people with free speech are crazy, and they're gonna say some crazy stuff, and some people in society are dumb, and they're gonna believe that crazy, dumb stuff. So I think that's just something that I'm coming to grips with. I mean, I just accept that it's a fact of life. People like David Icke exist, and people exist that will believe what David Icke says. So yeah, I just don't think censorship was the right thing here. Tactically, from YouTube's own agenda, like of not wanting more people to commit harm and believe this crazy conspiracy, and also philosophically, I just disagree with that thing. I think David Icke's comments do fall under free speech, even though it's crazy and insane and he's an idiot, right? But it is very much on the edge, and I accept that some of you out there will disagree with me, and that's okay. You can disagree with me because like I said, it is that edge case. You know, I don't think you're crazy if you think that his comments fall more on that line of shouting fire in a theater and that free speech doesn't apply. I see where you're coming from. But that's what I wanted to say on that issue. Now, I really wanted to talk about the actual content of the interview, which has been totally hijacked by this free speech conversation. So I'm gonna make a separate video about that. I feel like these are two issues, totally separate. What David Icke actually said on Brian Rose's interview.
For the last 6 months, I've been working on my own NFT project. CryptoZoo.co. It's a really fun game that makes you money.
I lost around $50,000 in CryptoZoo.
I lost $40,000.
$500,000 Australian.
I'm telling you, it's just a picture. There's nothing I can do with it.
Wait, you can't even hatch?
No.
We had a issue with CryptoZoo where our lead developer took the code that he made, fled to Switzerland, and like held it hostage for $1 million.
He literally never gave me anything at all, ever. And he promised me, 5% tokens and $1 million. He literally never paid me.
Wait a second. Who's Eddie? I thought that all of this was Logan Paul. What's this random guy doing in Logan Paul's project? And who is he? Who is Eddie Ibanez? To begin answering the question of who Eddie is, I decided to take a deep dive. I started by looking through all the news articles I could on Eddie, where I found out he graduated from MIT, and from there became a data scientist and cybersecurity expert, and used that technical background to win a Super Bowl for the Eagles. And there were videos on him too, which all painted him as brilliant and extremely accomplished.
Yes, hi, my name's Eddie Ibanez. I'm a father of 3, lead developer here at CryptoZoo.
As a teenager, he successfully hacked AOL from his bedroom. He continued to pursue computer science until attending MIT. He was then recruited out to work for a government agency in cybersecurity, developing software that reverse engineers the location of known government and terrorist threats.
You started with the federal government and you started off really tracking criminals with burner phones and all.
Honestly, after this whole search, I felt more confused than ever. If Eddie's such an amazing guy, why didn't he pay developers? And is he really the puppet master behind CryptoZoo? Or is it someone else? Honestly, I felt like at this point I needed a drink and I needed to ask for help.
Coffee, how's it going?
Not good.
Oh, what happened?
Well, I'm confused about this Eddie Ibanez guy. He comes out of nowhere with this CryptoZoo story, and everything about him I find seems great.
So, what's the problem?
Well, everything's not great. Everything about this guy just seems too perfect. He's an MIT grad, he works for the military. He even claims he won a Super Bowl. Why would that guy work for Logan Paul?
I don't know, but I can find out. You said his name is Eddie Ibanez?
I think he goes by Eduardo technically, but wait, what are you doing?
I'm just looking around. And done.
Well, what'd you find?
A few red flags, a couple of misdemeanors. Ooh, a few court cases. I'll send him over. He got sued by his landlord for not paying rent, sued by his credit card company for not paying his bill.
You can skip that stuff. I just need whatever's relevant to CryptoZoo.
Well, that's basically it. Other than... Hold on. No, wait, I did find something. Look at this.
What's this?
It's from a paper in Philly. I barely picked it up. This reporter says Eddie's entire story is fake.
Wait, what?
Yeah, the whole Eddie Ibanez character. This guy Adam Robb investigated it. He says it's a lie.
I gotta find this guy. Here, send me his info. I got some calls to make.
Coffee!
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We met up with Adam Robb, the reporter who's been investigating Eddie Ibanez for a while now. And I wanted to know, what did Adam think of him when they first met?
I wasn't quite sure what to make of him. Based on what I knew about him, he was a MIT grad who went on to work for the CIA and the Defense Department, and I didn't want to waste his time. And it wasn't long after I sat down that I realized he was wasting my time.
Can you tell me about some of the lies Eddie told you?
Eddie has told me so many lies over the course of my 2 interviews with him, and the first lie he told me is probably the oldest lie that he's told so many people, which is that he's an orphan. I first realized Eddie might be lying to me when I went home the next day and Googled Eddie Ibanez's family. I found a video of Eddie and his wife making rice pudding on a Fox and Friends segment on Fox News, and Eddie's wife Jackie explained that she learned the recipe from Eddie's mother.
So in that picture, you've got Jackie Ibanez. You know her, along with her husband Eddie and her 2 little girls. You love rice pudding. Why is this a family recipe?
Okay, so Eddie's mom made this rice pudding once.
Wait, Eddie's mom? I thought Eddie was an orphan. Well, it turns out the only problem with that is that not only does his mom exist, she's alive and in his life. And it turns out it wasn't just Adam that heard this story either. He told it a lot.
Did you ever meet his mother or his parents?
I did meet his mother.
Did he ever tell you he was an orphan?
Yes.
How did he square that with you?
So that's why I'm so confused. He told me he was an orphan and all this stuff, but then I meet his mom.
He told me he was an orphan and then I met his mother is quite the string of words. But as insane as these lies are, let's be real, it doesn't explain why CryptoZoo failed. But the next lies kind of do, because part of Eddie's story is also that he went to MIT, where he was recruited to the CIA. And it's part of why he was so attractive as a lead developer, all the wild experiences that he had had. But it's just not true.
I emailed the MIT registrar's office and I asked if Eddie Ibanez attended the school, and they confirmed in absolute terms that he never attended MIT.
That's right. The whole orphan to MIT origin story, it wasn't true. And Eddie's whole backstory from here kind of falls apart as well. How could he have been recruited to a government agency out of MIT if he never went to MIT? If this is all seeming crazy to you, you might ask yourself, who would believe all this? And this is where Eddie shines. He kind of had a gift for getting people to believe in the lies he told, especially super rich and powerful people for some reason. Like take, for instance, this story, him winning the Super Bowl for the Philadelphia Eagles. He managed to convince the owner of the New York Yankees that it was true, Barry Klarberg, who completely bought into it without question and told the same story later in a college seminar.
Let's jump right into the work that you did for the Philadelphia Eagles, which led to a Super Bowl championship, led to you getting a Super Bowl ring.
Yep.
Tell us exactly what your job was to do for them and how it worked out.
No, sure thing. So first off, they said like, we don't know where to put you. But and then the sports science guy was the one guy. He's like, hey, I got some data. I'm interested. So we took in his data, and then we found out that these players, what happens is it's like a player as they run around, they get at certain fatigue levels. So if you ever played Street Fighter, the video game, there's like a red bar at the top, and every time you get hit, that red bar goes down until you die, KO, right? So then we're trying to figure out kind of what that is for a player, and on an injury level, right? There's an injury bar that gets knocked down and that gets KO'd.
This is insane. He convinced an owner of the Yankees that he won a Super Bowl by turning sports athletes into Street Fighter characters. And of course, none of it's true. The Philadelphia Eagles responded to a fact check saying he never worked for their player analysis team. Not only that, the Eagles also said that Eddie did try to do an in-person presentation in March of 2018, but that was already a month after the Eagles had already won the Super Bowl. And also they didn't hire him because of course not. Meaning there's no way this story is true. And yet he's convinced people at the highest levels of sports that it is. And this is where we get back to CryptoZoo, of course, because it's how he got involved with that project. Remember Jeff Levin, Logan's manager, who we spoke to last time? Well, he also spoke to Adam Robb. And when he told him the reasons he liked Eddie, they sounded very familiar.
And did he tell you, I guess, kind of like about like working with the NFL and that kind of stuff and the whole, like his time in the CIA and all that?
He did. And it was interesting. It was like, this is wild, like, that's pretty cool. But he's humble and he's not like ever bragging or anything like that.
Wait, but he is bragging. He literally made it all up. The CIA, NFL stories aren't true. How could that not be bragging? But that's the impression Eddie gave off. But that's not all. Because Eddie didn't just use made-up stories to get in with the CryptoZoo team. He also used his other connections, his real millionaire and billionaire friends that he's managed to gain with all these fake stories. And some of them vouched for him. People like Chris Birch and Todd Morley.
And what was the thing that kind of like sold you on Eddie? Was it the fact that like Chris and Todd and people like that kind of like have backed him in the past and like?
I just think he's a down-to-earth, cool, humble guy.
Okay.
Who's been super successful. They're trying to do an agenda, and he's just kind of like, hey, look, I'm super smart in what I know, and I have amazing relationships through business that I've done.
It's incredible. I mean, how does this guy keep getting away with it? Honestly, it's baffling. But I've got to say, up till now, everyone's been fooled sort of fair and square on the same grounds. But I found out CryptoZoo did have an advantage that could have saved them all this trouble the whole time.
So a month before the launch of CryptoZoo, I got on the phone with Jeff Levin, Logan Paul's manager. And after he spoke fondly of Eddie and his work, I confronted him about some of Eddie's lies, including how he didn't work for the NFL. Jeff told me he doesn't know much about the NFL, but he knows about the business world. And Chris Birch and Todd Morley vouched for Eddie. And so Jeff and Logan were going to continue working with him.
Have you ever verified that anything Eddie said about himself is true?
We verified that it's true.
Yeah.
We definitely talk to people.
Okay.
And his friends and and people that he said he has relationships with, which we've confirmed them for sure.
Okay, because I had trouble with some of that, like with the NFL, like saying that, like, no, we've never worked with him, and that kind of thing. But you've had
the NFL saying that?
Yeah.
Like who at the NFL?
The comms teams for the Eagles and the Dolphins, and then the people specifically that he named that he said he worked with.
Got it. I don't know necessarily the football stuff.
Okay.
I don't have relationships in the football world.
Sure.
But in the business world, we've definitely, talked to multiple people.
Like Todd and Chris, and they backed him.
Correct.
Wait a second. This means at minimum, Jeff knew about Eddie's background beforehand, or part of it, and still decided to go with him. This is just unbelievable, willful stupidity. And since Jeff is Logan's manager, I assume him and the team should have known about this as well. But still, they went forward with it even though they knew this stuff before launch. Now, I started to reach out for comments about this because obviously this is a huge deal. But when I did, I got a call from somebody new, someone with a different perspective that I hadn't heard from before. Jake, the Crypto King. He's been involved with some of Logan's projects in the past, like Pokemon, for example. He was called the collectibles guru a few years ago. Nowadays, he goes by Crypto King, and he's an advisor for the CryptoZoo project. So let's add him to the conspiracy board. But the question is, what did he have to say? I took a call with him, and he mostly wanted to talk off the record. But when I pressed him, he was willing to at least put one thing on the record for me. Right. One more thing about Eddie before we get off of him. We actually...
The biggest reason it failed, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because I don't want it to ever be thought that Logan's the reason it failed. He's not. Logan wasn't smart enough for what he tried to build. And then when it was built and was failing, didn't have the ability to correct it and to save face and reputation. It was more convenient to pull out than to be associated with a failing project that the dev rocked. So I could put that one sentence on the record.
Well, that is certainly emphatic. Crypto King says it's all Eddie's fault. And this is a nice, neat theory for us. Eddie ruined everything because, yeah, Eddie is a liar. So it does seem to explain how these developers got screwed. But this theory doesn't fit all the facts because Eddie was kicked off the team months ago. And still, the game is not working, despite Logan claiming they were going to go back and fix all the problems.
Again, retroactively working to make these projects right, and this takes time, bro. It just It takes time. Development takes time.
Working backwards to fix things, which isn't ideal, but also this project will speak for itself.
And now, we're working backwards to try to fix it.
This just hasn't happened. Even a year from launch, the game just doesn't exist. What's worse is the newest dev team who came on after Eddie just quit. And one of the reasons was they hadn't been paid for over a month. I know this because Logan's team is leakier than the Titanic and someone told me that, but we also have blockchain evidence. This is Jeff paying Block Ops, the company they hired out on July 19th. They were supposed to redo all this work. It's confirmed by their leader, Skip, talking about a first monthly payment on that day. But after that, there's nothing until they quit on September 26th in a post called Our Departure from CryptoZoo. Now, I do have to say, it does look like they were eventually paid, but only a day after they quit. And this is just the same problem as before, slightly different. Nobody can pay these devs on time, and investors end up getting nothing. And so I can't buy into the idea that Eddie's at fault for everything, because when Eddie was gone, they had a lot of the same problems. Now, it was only at the point that this dev team quit, Block Ops, that things really took a turn. Because if the Titanic was leaking before, now it was sinking, and everyone basically gave up hope. From every direction, I started getting messages from all the investors who felt betrayed, who up to this point were holding on to hope. Now they felt defeated. They felt tricked by the CryptoZoo team who had fed them promise after promise, and they were sick of it.
He was never in the chat or anything, never apologized or told us anything.
Things didn't work out. We all get that. But to continuously lie, lead people on, hype people up, to put more money in, all the while in the background, things are going down, things are hitting the fan, and you've left us holding the bag.
I know it was my decision, and I did my research, but I believe nobody has to lose money in this way.
And that's when a whistleblower stepped forward and decided enough was enough. They decided to leak me messages, team messages, from the CryptoZoo team from all the way back in the beginning when they thought of this idea, all the way up to launch. And seeing that, it changed everything. Because all of a sudden, I got a lot of new information. Remember how Jake, the Crypto King, said Eddie was the only problem? Well, a year ago, he was saying something very different. On the day of launch, he said this to the group: Logan, you stole 40 million in tokens from me. You are a scam artist. You are a liar, and you betrayed your own community. You aren't that guy. Logan replies, oh, Jake, trust me, bro. I am that guy.
You're gonna change this whole story. Yeah, I'll go on the record for you, and yes, I'm gonna show you the text message that say we can sell at these ascending market caps, and that it's not like I was trying to rug a project. It's like I put $250,000 into a project plus 6 months of time, and the founder never did anything he said he was going to do, and then hired a bunch of devs that didn't do what they were going to do. And every time I gave advice, the advice was I was told. So there was nothing illegal about that. Ethically, arguable. The rest that Logan did to me was ethically wrong and illegal.
This video has been a long time coming. I got a professional investor to come on the show and tell us what he thinks of all these ridiculous fake gurus. I wanted to know, do these professional investors, people who run hedge funds, people who are institutional investors, do they actually respect people like Ricky Gutierrez, Tim Sykes? Are these actual traders that you should listen to, or are they just frauds? So you're going to hear it straight from an actual professional investor. Forget about these 20-year-olds on their little laptops telling you that it's so easy. Just spend an hour with us. Come on. I know you guys like to see the Lambos. We don't have any of that for you. I know you guys want to see the nice houses. We don't have any of that for you. What we do have is somebody who has spent his life in the stock market, and he's going to tell you that not everything you've been told is gold. So please enjoy this hour-long video, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome to Coffeezilla. Today, guys, we have Patrick Boyle. Patrick, you've been an institutional investor for over 20 years. You teach at university in the UK, and you're now a hedge fund manager. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And on top of that, you have a finance YouTube channel, which is criminally undersubscribed to, because you talk about, a bunch of interesting real finance topics, not how to make $500 in a day. You're actually trying to educate people on how to trade with a quantitative approach. And you reached out because you said, look, we're talking about something I had said about day trading, but I said, hey, why don't you come on the show and talk to people? Because obviously you understand trading at a higher level than probably 99% of any of these YouTubers or coaches or anything like that. And so I'd like to talk to you about reasonable expectations for people who are getting in the stock market, reasonable expectations for how to know if somebody's selling you something rather than actually giving you a real education. And we'll go from there, but let's just start off. As someone who's been on the institutional side, now you're on the hedge fund side, you teach this stuff at a university level. What do you think the state of education is with trading on YouTube right now?
It's interesting because there are some good channels out there that I quite enjoy, like that kind of just give a good explanation of sort of what various products are. I think, there's a fairly obvious differentiation between the people who are telling you how to get rich and the people explaining things to you. And I would argue, in a funny way, I think that, the sort of fake guru thing is not just an investment world or a money-making thing. It's there everywhere, like in that, and some of it relates, as you said, reasonable expectations. Like if you'll see someone telling you, how to lose 50 pounds in 2 weeks and have a, six-pack abs, or how to learn the guitar in one easy lesson. And, all of these things, like you have to sort of ask yourself, is it reasonable? Like these, like, is it reasonable to think that someone could very quickly, within a few weeks, tell me how to do this sort of thing?
Yeah. And I think, though, the problem with stocks is that with weight loss, it's pretty easy for most people to understand why that's unrealistic. The stock market's much more complicated, and most people who have no experience with the stock market might very well be taken in by the idea that, like, oh yeah, it's reasonable to expect I'm making 2% a day, and that's like a reasonable rate of return. Can you talk about what should people be expecting for day trading? What is an excellent return, and what's just like, that doesn't happen? When does it become?
Well, let's actually start just with that 2% a day argument, because that's kind of a slightly comical one, If you think about it, it might sound reasonable to someone initially. Like if you say, well, if you took something and bought it for $100 and sold it for $102, that sounds within the range of reasonable expectations. But if we then kind of annualize it out, if you take 2% a day, that would turn into about, I don't know, 140,000% a year, roughly. Like that's what you're talking about. And in 3 years, you could take your $100 and that would make you probably about 16 times wealthier than Jeff Bezos, for example. It would make you, if you were 16 times wealthier than Jeff Bezos, you actually would be probably wealthier than the 100 wealthiest people in the world combined, right? And so 2% a day, when you kind of go, oh, well, I bought something for 100 and sold it at 102. Now I'll do that every day. That's not how the world works, A good example, like when I looked up like some of the returns of the greatest investors of all time. So people like George Soros and Warren Buffett have probably the best records out there. And, a lot of people kind of go, oh, Buffett, it's boring, or at least the sort of fake gurus would. But Warren Buffett and George Soros have each returned about 20% a year over 40 years, which is about twice the return of the market, So that's amazing returns to have gotten away with. Steve Cohen of SAC Capital returned around 30% a year over a much shorter time frame. And it's worth noting that he has been banned from trading client money by the SEC. And, there are, I don't know that anything is proven, but there have been questions around his trading.
That's certainly worth noting. Let me say, though, so what these people will say to this, when I say this or when you say this, they go, hey, well, that's because you're talking about people handling very large accounts. And my genius strategy that's making me 2% a day consistently just doesn't work on that scale. And that's why I'm only making, like, let's say they make $100,000, $500,000 a year. They go, this is like a Tim Sykes thing. I can really take people from trading with like nothing to trading about a 1 million to 2 million account size. But after that, my strategies don't work, which is why I'm not a Warren Buffett. That's what they'll say. What would you say to that?
There is something there in that even the fund Palomar that I ran, we capped the amount of investor money we would take in because we're doing short-term strategies, and that means they're less scalable. But the nature of something being less scalable also makes it less shareable, right? Because why would you take something, if he's able to turn, we'll say, $1,000 into $1 million in a year and then continually trade that, why would he ever give that to the public? And it's not like you ran into him and he's a friend of yours and he offered to help you out with this advice, right? Like when you search, if you just Google like great trading strategies, like the first 10 ads will be from these guys, right? Like, so not only are they willing to give it away, but they're willing to spend money on ads to tell you that they'll give it away to you.
So in other words, if it's a strategy that is limited in scale, that doesn't make any sense because they're paying good money to scale it to the moon.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, not only that, it's actually even an interesting thing is because what I run is sort of quantitative strategies. And what that essentially means is that I take a lot of data and I analyze them and look for opportunities within the market that in theory work repeatedly. Now what you actually find them when you do that is you find a mix of strategies that work quite well, and you find other ones that look like they will work quite well, but then they don't out of sample. And it's always difficult to differentiate between those before, on day one. But the nature of those kinds of strategies, as I've said, they're usually not scalable. And so you keep them as a secret, and you keep them as a secret, not even out of a lack of generosity, but it's a lot of work for me to find a good trading strategy. And if I worked in offices with great people and they've sort of said to me like, oh, could you explain how this works? And it's like, I can't tell you that because then everyone will do it and then it won't work, because that's the nature of some, actually the first guy I worked with, the first kind of really interesting fund manager was a guy named Victor Niederhofer who wrote a great book called Education of a Speculator. And in the opening of the book, he basically says, there will be no trading secrets in here, because if I could tell you this sort of thing, why would I tell you that and put myself at a disadvantage and return myself to being a mere mortal, struggling to feed himself, And so, and actually an interesting one, because when I did start that job, I was around 20 years old. And I remember kind of arriving in the office with a guy who I knew had, he had run Soros's Quantum Fund throughout the 1980s, under periods of huge returns. And I kind of thought, this is great. I'll sit here and he will teach me his ways, And instead he sat me there and he said, there's a computer, there's a load of data. Go and find a good trade, because he didn't hire me to teach me stuff. He hired me to find stuff that he could find useful. And that's kind of the nature of any of this stuff. Like when people look at my YouTube channel, I often try to explain unusual technical things in the market. Like one of my bigger videos was a while ago when oil prices had gone negative. It was all over the newspaper. The oil prices were negative. And what I tried to explain in the video was how sort of the nature of the futures market means that when you're buying and selling oil futures, you're not really buying oil that's in the ground. You're buying oil that expires at a certain time. And so therefore the price relates to storage costs and all these other things. And I put up this video and it did well, but a funny thing is a lot of the people in the comment section then wanted me to say, well, should I buy oil or not? And it's like, no, I'm not telling you what to do, because if I tell you to buy something, you then have to come back to me and be told when to sell it, right? Like I'm explaining how it works. And once you arm yourself with all of these ideas, you're better able to make decisions, once you understand the products you're trading better. And that's kind of my goal with my channel.
Right. No, and I think that's the nature of real education is not like, okay, tell me what to do. Now I'm going to do it. And I'm going to come back to you. And now you tell me what to do again. And I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to do it again. And I think a lot of these things end up sort of also being a bit of pyramid schemes where these people, they give signals to their audience who then rushes out and buys the thing and they sell it on the way up. Like the person.
That's sort of the oldest scheme in the world. You read, one of the things I would advise people if they want to learn about investing and trading is to read a lot of books. And there's books going back hundreds of years on the idea of financial speculation or investing or whatever it might be. And these tricks are all as old as the hills, and these guys have been around forever.
It's just kind of a new coat of paint is what you're saying. Just
exactly. It's just, there's nothing necessarily that new about their claims. But, the pump and dump scheme is basically what you're describing there. And, it's a thing that's been around forever. The internet gives it new life because you're able to reach more people over the internet than you're able to reach. But interestingly enough, one of the things we first started chatting about was Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street, who is now, I guess, setting himself up as an investing guru of some sort.
Yeah, he's joined ragingbull.com, for those of you who don't know, which is under ownership by this guy, Jeff Bishop, I believe, or... Here, let me look it up real quick. Raging Bull.
Well,
and I know...
Interestingly enough, I see the ads once again all over YouTube. The funny thing is if you create financial content, you get financial ads, and they tend to all be sort of questionable ads, I would say. And, Jeff Bishop is one of these guys, kind of getting on an airplane with wads of cash, for some reason, like when I invest in the market and I make a profit, it usually turns up in my account. Well, their brokers seem to drop off these large bags of cash that they then have to take on a private jet, to an island where presumably they bury it or something. But, Jeff Bishop, there's two guys, Jeff Bishop and Jason Bond, who seem to head up Raging Bull. Now, in the ad that I most often see, Jeff Bishop says he's the founder of Raging Bull. And I remember thinking, Raging Bull's been around for a while, and so the internet exists. You can look up who founded Raging Bull. It's founded in 1998 by three college roommates. None of them were Jeff Bishop. So
that's so
and
funny.
actually, I think you could even find his LinkedIn CV, and it's not obvious to me that he ever worked in any sort of investing role other than sort of pitching stocks on Raging Bull. So,
oh my gosh, that's so funny! I did not know that. But now to bring us back to Belfort, now Jordan Belfort is being pitched as some stock guy. And you made some hilarious observation that maybe you should just repeat here, because I find it hilarious because he is a salesman. I will give him, he's a good salesman. And that's what he was teaching for some time. And I was like, okay, at least you're obviously a good salesman. That's fine. I don't really have that big of a problem with it. But now that he's selling stocks, it's like you were arrested for what you did with stocks.
He received a 4-year sentence for securities fraud and money laundering, I believe, just to be clear. So I kind of think that if he was setting up, teaching you how to maybe sell a pencil on Amazon, that might be... I've seen the Wolf of Wall Street film, and he seemed to be an excellent pencil salesman, but it's just not obvious. I mean, maybe the only thing he's maybe less suited to, having watched that film, is maybe teaching someone Lamborghini maintenance tips. That's the only thing I would say. I mean, this is a guy, in fact, amusingly as well, on his Wikipedia page, where you can see I get all of my information, it says that his greatest regret, he claims, is losing people's money, And he didn't lose people's money. He stole people's money. There's a difference. He didn't lose it. They lost it.
Right. Yeah. He stole it and then spent it.
He stole, I believe, or at least he was required to return to his clients $110 million. Apparently, 10 was paid back, and that was through asset forfeiture and so on. Which means, you know, the way these guys talk about how much money they've made or how wealthy they are, Jordan Belfort, it would appear to me possibly as a net worth of minus $100 million, you know? So
that's who you're finding. Yeah. I believe I forget what the product line is called, but they're pitching it as free, but it requires a membership. So it's like, okay.
Yeah. Well, and another thing I'd recommend to people who might be interested in signing up for these kinds of courses is if you look on websites like the Better Business Bureau, you can see how well people have done. We'll say if they subscribe to a service and try and cancel, whether they get their money back and so on. And, you know, you can find Raging Bull has a score on the Better Business Bureau website if anyone's interested in looking that up.
What is the score?
It's not 5 stars.
Okay, that's a very nice way to put it. Oh, it's one and like a third stars out of 5.
Well, you've got to imagine that
so
some
bad.
people
Better Business Bureau rating of F. Yeah, and they're not even like the Better Business Bureau. It's not even, a lot of people can get A's even being fraudulent. So the fact you have an F, anytime I see an F on the Better Business Bureau, I think, wow, you must be really doing something wrong.
Well, it means you haven't upset some of your clients. It means you've upset most of them, you know?
That's right. So actually I have a question. So let's say somebody, because I feel like this is a great opportunity. Let's say somebody wants to get into investing. First of all, specifically day trading, because I made a video that made a lot of people mad where I said day trading, you'll probably lose money. I cited a couple studies that have looked at a bunch of day traders and what their returns were. Yeah. And as you know, even the day traders who do well 1 year or even 2 years, typically it's only a minor indication of how well they'll do the next year and the year after that and whatever. So I basically said, look, you're better off probably, unless you're going to spend your life doing this, you're better off just investing in the market. Would you agree with that? And then if somebody wants to day trade, what are reasonable expectations? Like if they actually want to learn how to do it, what are the books maybe to look into? And then also, we're talking returns here. There's some people who think they're going to make $100,000 a year day trading pretty quickly. What do you think about that? Okay,
so there's a few things like, because, I teach finance at a university and a lot of the students ask me about starting up trading, and to a certain extent, I slightly say to my students, it's a good idea to have a brokerage account and to invest some money, because even just if you go to a job interview, if you're, often you'll have someone in a job interview and they'll say, my passion is investing in stocks. And you kind of go, what stocks do you own? And they go, well, I don't own any. And it's like, well, it's not exactly your passion, and that's all right. Things don't have to be your passion. But, I do say to them, it doesn't hurt to have an investment account, but that's different to day trading. I usually advise them, if they want to sort of start this sort of thing up, is just get an Excel spreadsheet and put in the trades that you would do and see how they work out. And that gives you a bit of a feeling. And there's some people and they kind of can't play with pretend money and act like it's real money. And there are others who really can. And if you are the kind who can, you'll possibly learn quite a bit about yourself and about risk tolerance and things like that. I think that's a good approach to start. In truth, I think for the majority of people, day trading doesn't make sense. And it's basically based, I did see the video you're talking about, and I think it's entirely accurate. And it's not me being negative, but, the reason, I do a lot of short-term trading, but I have very good relationships with brokers and that kind of thing where I trade very cheaply. And it's not like, some of the trading apps tell you they don't charge you a commission, but, people make money one way or another. And if they don't charge you a commission, but route your trades to, a high frequency trader, they've been well compensated for this, So
can you break that down a little bit for people? Because they're thinking, okay, no, it's a no commission. How can I?
Once again, there's kind of the basic rule of economics. There's no such thing as a free lunch. What essentially Firstly, a lot of these brokerage firms they're not making the money they used to because they've brought their commissions close to zero. But high frequency trading firms will pay them to send those trades into the pool. In fact, the guy who invented this thing of paying for flow was Bernie Madoff, interestingly enough. But he had another business besides Ponzi schemes. But and interestingly, when I was at university, we did a case study on whether Bernie Madoff was a fraud, but it wasn't whether he was a fraud, whether his business was ethical, because it was about rerouting trades like this. We deemed it not ethical. We just didn't know how unethical it was.
This is before.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Around 2004. There's a business school case study out there you can find, in terms of why the problem with day trading is, we'll say, for example, if you start out, like even if you have a good amount of money, you've got $1 million and you want to invest that in day trade, a good year might give you sort of a 10, maybe 20% return, which is 1 to 200,000 a year, and that's great. But there are also months and days and years when you will have horrible returns, and that's just the way it is. And look at the greatest investors out there and their returns, and you'll see that there are, even multi-year periods of terrible returns. And you have to sort of still put food on the table throughout those difficult periods, and you have to stick with it through those periods if that's reasonable. And so that's if you start out with, we'll say, $1 million. Most of the people who are talking about doing this are talking about starting out with a lot less money. And the problem is, if you start out with 10,000 and want to make 10,000 a year, you have to double your.
They want to make 10,000 a month. Are you kidding?
Well, that won't happen, because it's kind of like saying, go to Vegas and you can make 10,000 in a month, and it's like, if you're lucky, but the long run expectation is that you will lose all of it, and that's another problem I have with a lot of the sort of fake gurus, is that, I watched a video, I think Jeff Bishop video on options the other day, and I have a bit of expertise. I've written a book on pricing derivatives and that sort of thing. And his video was firstly filled with errors, to be clear. But then on top of that, he was saying that the beauty of investing using options is that you can 10 times lever your money. So instead of, if the market moves up 10%, you'll double your money, and that's great. And it's like, he doesn't mention, or he kind of glosses over, that if it moves against you at all, that you will materially
lose everything.
Yeah, and that this is expected to happen. Like this, and not only that, then he also advocates the most volatile stocks. Like when he says you could trade, and he lists out 5 stocks, and they're all like the most volatile things. And not only have you found the craziest thing, but then you're levering it 10 times. He made these other errors where he said that when you buy an option, that it's made up of intrinsic value and time value, and the time value is the amount that you can lose. And it's like, no, when you sign up to trade options, you sign a disclosure disclosure that states that you can lose more than you invest, and that is the truth. That's what you can lose, is more than the initial capital. But on to like whether people should day trade or not, I think it's reasonable for people to learn about finance and to invest. I think it's reasonable to start out small, not 10 times levered. And I also think that the other thing you have to look at is sort of your lost earnings from other things, because when these guys are sort of sitting on a beach with a laptop claiming to make 2% a day, I don't leave the office. I haven't had a holiday in probably 8 years since I've had a holiday. Okay.
Yeah, but Patrick, respectfully, that's because you actually do this for a living.
Well,
these people don't. These people don't actually do it. They just sell it. And so part of their job is to show up on the beach with a photograph, with a photographer. And that's their job, is to sell the lifestyle of this so-called mysterious day. But you're out here saying, look, if you actually want to do this for real, you're not taking a day off. You're
It's hard and grueling work. It is emotionally stressful, because whenever things go well, you feel like a genius. And when things go badly, you feel like the world's greatest idiot and a fraud. You look at yourself and you're like, why did I just, I could have done other things with my life, And that was actually a point I was getting to, is that, for a lot of people, if you want to talk about like, I remember in the late 90s, there was a friend of mine who, her husband shut down his dental practice to become a day trader because he could make more money trading stocks than he could working as a dentist. But you have to look at the income you've given up by doing this as well. Like if you quit your job to be a day trader, the problem is, you have to make the amount of money that you need to feed yourself, for one thing, which might not be easy. And secondly, you don't have like any steady income coming in. So there's opportunity cost. Also, your CV isn't, if you're young, because I feel a lot of this stuff is pitched at quite young people. And
oh yeah,
it's all on Instagram and things like that, where, no one over the age of 30 has ever logged in, And, the thing is that it's misleading as to, you don't just damage, you don't just lose some of your savings. You can also sort of harm your career. And it's a funny one, when I launched my fund, I had worked in the investment management business for probably around 15 years at that point. And I was slow to launch my business because I'd seen so many people, like good, smart people that I knew, start up, and then it just doesn't go very well. And they spend 5 years kind of breaking even or making a little bit of money, but never enough. And they're kind of never able to go back to doing a real job again, because there's always this hope that it's going to work, And I really waited until, firstly, I was able to start with a reasonable amount of capital, but secondly, even that I had sort of, I had 15 years of trading experience, including through the financial crisis and sort of stressful situations before, because, someone who's honest with themselves also asks, are my returns random? And it's not always, it's not always obvious. We'll say, for example, even, when I brought up that Soros and Buffett have amongst the best records out there, the truth is there's a lot of people trading stocks, right? There'll always be two people like if it was a coin flipping contest, there would always be two people
with weird records that are way outliers, that they're just always seeming to win.
It's just the nature of randomness. And a funny thing, because I worked for Vic Niederhofer and he met occasionally George Soros, and Soros was stressed about this. He would never put himself forth as someone with genius ideas. Victor used to say that at the end of the year, Soros would be dejected and say, I'm out of ideas. I don't know what to do. And Victor would say, well, you've just had 100% return last year. This is, you're the greatest trader in the world. And Soros would go, yeah, but that was then, I don't know that I have that anymore. And that's how a real person thinks. These guys don't, one of the things I would say, if you want to try and differentiate between a fake guru and someone who's really knowledgeable, is just look at how they behave, because they behave quite differently. Like if you look at how, look at the sort of Forbes wealthiest people in the world and how they behave, and then look at how these guys are like sort of flashing their Lamborghinis and, a bookshelf in the garage, because that's where you keep books. And, like this is not how normal people behave. And I think they've kind of triggered in all of these like little psychological reactions. Like they've worked out how to make you jealous, and they've worked out, and Instagram, I think, is just an amazing jealousy machine, And
it's true. Its main function is just to make people constantly jealous of each other.
Exactly. And these guys they show you all of this kind of crazy kind of lifestyles of the rich and famous, or MTV Cribs lifestyle, and tell you a year ago I was just like you. And it's not really believable, but gosh, people like to dream, like I understand why people sort of fall for it,
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I'd also like to say is one way you can differentiate, I mean, this is my humble opinion, and you should tell me if you agree or disagree, is I feel like
people who understand what they're doing don't dumb it down and make it seem easier than it is. Trading is extraordinarily difficult if you want to achieve a outsized alpha, repeatedly. Yeah. And so I think that what people, when I see your videos, I'm not seeing how to make all this money so quick. It's like sort of like fundamental principles of this, statistics, all these kind of basic techniques. And those are the basics. I mean, that's just even to get your feet wet in the field. But if you actually want to do real work, you have to understand it to an even more technical level. I think, so what do you think when you see all these people doing so much technical analysis and just like constantly trading just candlesticks and stuff like that? What do you think of that?
Well, a funny thing is that, as I told you, when I started that first job and I sort of expected to be told all these trading strategies, and people said to me, no, go and find your own trading strategies. So step one was to go to a bookshelf and to take down all of these technical analysis books. And so I sat there and methodically tested them. And in particular, actually candlesticks, they're the easiest to test because it's just open, high, low, close data, right? And so there's often just 3 candlesticks in there, right? So you can take that sort of pattern and run it through all the stock market data that you want to and see if it works or not. And amazingly, I was almost surprised because even according to randomness, you'd expect some of it to work better, but there were very few things that had any sort of a Sharpe ratio at all. And many of them that were sort of supposed to be bullish signals were bearish signals and so on. And
so it's actually giving you the opposite. It's like actually doing worse than you might expect from just even randomness.
Exactly. And, the problem, one of the problems with being a day trader with short-term trading is that firstly, you're running up a lot of trading costs. It's expensive to trade. Even on top of not only do you have these high trading costs, but you also then have, it's all short-term gains, right? Which is taxed at a terrible rate. And, the investments that
No one ever tells you that. No one ever tells you that.
No, and in truth, I don't even think it's reasonable. I don't know why a short-term gain is worse than the long-term gain, but that's the tax code, and it's the tax code in most countries. Now, the kind of people, because what I do is short-term trading, there's certain tax advantages in futures, but not only that, the kind of people who invest with me are usually people who have non-taxable accounts. So there are certain strategies that might make sense in a retirement account that don't make sense in your regular account. And, these are all subtleties, Jason Bond or whoever isn't going to tell you this stuff, but this an interesting one, even when I was at university, one of the first studies I did was to look at the behavior of stock prices around their dividend dates, right? And the idea was that a stock that pays a dividend, if it pays a $1 dividend, you'd expect it to fall by $1 in value, right? And the problem is that the dividend is taxed at one rate. And so you would think that maybe there might be an arbitrage in there, that you could buy dividend paying stocks, we'll say in your retirement account, and that you could buy non-dividend paying. In fact, I think it's a great idea still that you could split your retirement account, have the dividend payers, and your regular account have the non-dividend payers, and then you're tax efficient, But that's a smart kind of quantitative trade. There's no investing guru telling you to do things like that.
Right. That's this subtlety with the tax code where you can kind of cheat out a little bit of extra income. And no.
Well,
Ricky Gutierrez isn't going to tell you this.
And actually, that's the problem, is that almost any good trading strategy often involves detailed knowledge. It involves knowing all of the rules of the markets, how they open, how they close, why people do certain things. There might be certain trading strategies that would be driven by, we'll say, for example, I did a video a little while ago on index adds and deletes, relating to Tesla possibly getting added to the S&P. And there are all kinds of ideas you can come to based around little technical things like that. But that's more work than sort of, in fact, there's one guy, I wish I knew his name, he has the worst possible video. He's one of the bag of money guys, and he has these videos where it shows stock price going up and stock price going down. And he's like, what I'll teach you is how to buy when it's going up and sell when it's going down. Other people do the opposite. And it's It's amazing that he's worked out this trick,
It's like a magic trick. I know. Yeah. It's like, I feel like these people are like magicians trying to convince you that magic is real when really they kind of have a con going on behind the scenes, and they're basically just fooling their audience. And then the people sort of in the know are like, do not fall for these guys. They're like selling you a lie. So, okay, let's just, because absolutely things aren't black and white, but let's say somebody's sitting out there, they have an account size of less than $100,000. And they're saying, Patrick, I see that you've got experience. I see that you teach university. Yes or no, should I try day trading, or should I just forget about it as a primary income?
I think it would be a horrible mistake, because your expected return off of that is zero, right? Because it will say if you're exposed to randomness, your expected return is zero. And that's just mathematically, right? We'll say if you happen to have an edge, you might, then look at all the good hedge funds out there and their returns, 20% a year for Buffett and Soros, right? So if you're as good as Buffett and Soros, which chances are you're maybe not, your return is $20,000 a year. You need to get a job. Do you know what I mean? Like, because you'll earn more. If you're the kind of person who's able to save up $100,000, you're probably a high enough earner that earning $20,000 a year, and also then it gets taxed as short-term gain, so the government takes half of it away from. Well, you'll be in a lower tax bracket, but being in a lower tax bracket is its own problem.
Yeah, right. Having not enough income is definitely its own. It's its own unique set of challenges. I'm glad you said that. Get a job. That's what I always say. All these people are trying to. They really dismiss jobs. Like they're like, yeah, you shouldn't be a guy with a job. They hate jobs. It's the weirdest thing ever.
It is a sort of a disgusting thing, like the revolt they have for like people who do real things,
real work.
There's one of the ads, and it kicks in with like, I remember the day my boss told me he was giving me a 5% pay cut, and I told him to stuff it. So sort of starts out like that, but it's all. Like there's such a scorn, like it's kind of like, look at me in my Lamborghini. I have such scorn for someone who works hard to put, food on the table of his family,
It's just terrible. It's terrible. Yeah. And then they go, yeah, this is realistic. Come sign up for my stupid course, which is the reason he owns the Lamborghini and the only way he can pay for it. And then you go sign up, you get less than expected returns.
And once again, when I say like, look at how these people behave and how actually wealthy people behave, like I've been fortunate in my career. I've met a lot of some of the wealthier people around, and I've never heard them be dismissive of a person's work, because it's work generates wealth, like it's really like if you can do something that helps someone, that makes their life better, they will pay you for that. And even that's my business. Like I invest money for people, and I do a type of analysis that is frankly grueling and unpleasant to do, and I trade it, and people will pay me to do that. But like, if you're not sort of doing stuff that makes the world, but my old boss, once again, Vic Niederhofer, had these T-shirts printed up that said "add value" on them, and he felt that was the route to all success in life. Is if you are adding value. It's even like if you have a YouTube channel, if you have a channel that some people can watch and get some value out of it, then it's worthwhile. If it's only for you, it's maybe less, it's not going to grow, and it's also not necessarily it's not worth your time, maybe.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what these people are doing is they're trying to teach like shortcuts to getting more wealth than you actually even are like you're not actually doing anything, so why do you expect to create this wealth? So there's kind of a mismatch of you're expecting to turn $100 into 100,000, but you know nothing about the stock market prior to this guy's course, and it's like he's supposed to take you there. Come on, get real.
Well, it's even the kind of these people telling you can make a fortune like buying stuff and selling it on Amazon, and it's like the most famous quote of Jeff Bezos is your margin is my profit opportunity. Or he's got some line like that, wherein everyone is terrified that Amazon will enter the business they're in because they grind the margins to zero.
Drive it down to zero. Yeah.
Yeah, and for some reason, people think that Jeff Bezos has left all of this fat for them to eat. And even
it's just no. Hold on. That is the craziest thing. I always tell people this. I'm like, you think Amazon FBA is the greatest opportunity? You're talking about the most ruthless businessman probably the 21st century has ever seen, and you're saying that guy is going to make you like millions and millions of dollars without basically grinding your bones and sucking as much blood as he can out of you? You've got to be kidding.
It's insane. And not only that, there's kind of this idea, like, I think what they often do as well is they rename a business something else. Like you had the term they used there for like Amazon something,
FBA.
Amazon,
yeah, it's just drop shipping.
They call it that because what it is opening a shop on the internet. Like if you're buying stuff, we'll say cheaply from a manufacturer and selling it to someone else, that's a shop. That's called a shop. You're now competing with Walmart and Target, but they have actual shops. You don't even have your own website. You're using Jeff Bezos's website, and you're going to get rich.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely hilarious. So for people who are like, okay, well, how can I make the stock market work for me? Because obviously how these people get away with doing this is because everyone knows the stock market itself is not a scam. There are ways to make people make fortunes on the stock market. They just don't make it overnight.
Yeah.
So I usually recommend that people do things like index funds, just really safe, super low fee strategies, things where you can get 95% of the value, let's say, out of the stock market with basically doing no work at all. That's how I usually advise. How do you, when you look at things, people, average everyday people who are just like, how do I get the most out of this without basically subjecting myself to extraordinary risk or extraordinary amounts of time that may not pay off for me? Let's just say they don't want to be a professional investor. What do you do with your money? What are your recommendations?
I would advise people firstly to put money away and don't even look at it. Like, so when you invest it, don't even look at it. Like if it's for your retirement, if it's in 30 years time, start looking at it in about 25 years, but just put it, as you say, in a low cost mutual fund, like place like Vanguard or Fidelity. They all provide them, right?
Yeah.
If you want to mix it up and sort of use your head a little bit more, like if the purely passive approach doesn't appeal to you, all of those big index fund services provide a bunch of indexes, right? And you can probably improve your diversification by maybe adding like opportunely, like you maybe sometimes, in recent years, growth stocks, all the technology stuff has done really well. In other periods, value stocks, like kind of the more boring companies do well. You might want to, if you feel that you can add value, you might allocate a little bit differently between those rather than just a pure index fund. You might want to, buy an international mutual fund or emerging markets or something like that if you feel there's been a big sell-off in that area, if it makes sense. But that's kind of as active. The stock market is a great thing, and it really is the route to wealth. Well, it can be the route to growing your wealth in that when you invest in stocks, what you do is you own a business or you own part of a business, and you should expect the kind of returns that a business will get. So if you're invested in Amazon, you should expect the kind of returns that Amazon will get or whatever. And so, sorry.
No problem.
So, investing in stocks is a good way of growing your wealth. I think everyone should invest, just to be clear. But I think that you need to do it with an amount of money that doesn't stress you. Like if you are staring at the daily moves, it probably means that you've exposed yourself to too much risk. If you're afraid of it, and just back your size down. There's a friend of mine who is a big fund manager, and he he refers to the stock market as being a lot like a casino, but he says you have the great fortune of being on the correct side of the tables, because over the long run, the stock market grows, we'll say at about 5% greater than the risk-free rate or than what you'd earn in bonds, right? And you get to put your money in and be like the house and sort of have the edge in your favor. But then what you do is you just put it in and you leave it in. And often, we all have these faults. We all have urges to do things differently, and they often harm us in the world of investing. And a great example, actually, the same guy, I'll send you a link later. He wrote a paper on a coin flipping game. And it was set up that the students who did it were told that the coins would flip, I think, 60% of the time you'd have a heads, right? And you get to bet on it. And he wanted to see how well people bet on this.
Is this a Malkiel argument? Or is this Burton Malkiel?
No, this is his name. He's actually one of the partners from Long-Term Capital Management, Victor Hagani.
Okay.
And another friend of mine, Ewan Kirk, wrote a really good kind of follow-up paper on it. But you've got a coin flipping contest. You've been told that you have a 60% chance of winning if you bet on heads every time. And he really wanted to see whether people sized accurately, because if you bet too much of your bankroll on that, you will still go bankrupt. There's actually kind of a formula, the Kelly formula, for correctly sizing your bets that is a kind of quant trader idea or a gambling idea. But so he wanted to see how close to like the Kelly optimal bet regular people came to. And he was shocked because he found that a lot of the time there were people, and after a long run of heads, they would bet on tails because they just felt it's time for tails to come up, And there's sort of a thing where we want to express ourselves, or prove our abilities. And often that's harmful, like when you've been told the winning strategy, a lot of people can't stick with the winning strategy.
They go with the losing strategy because they go, I just want to be different, or I want to be.
Yeah.
Maybe they think it's time for tails. It's time
for a change, yeah. And they sort of feel that will prove that the return is about them rather than that it's sort of a return that they're harvesting. And in the real world, like even all of my quant trading, it's about harvesting returns. Like I find a return stream. It's a risky return stream always, by the way. There's no such thing as a risk-free high returns. I find these return streams and I try and harvest them, and then I try and find more of them. And basically, like when someone invests in something like a hedge fund, firstly, you shouldn't really usually invest in a hedge fund unless you've got tons of money that's already in the stock market. And then you kind of say, what could smooth out my returns? And the way I would tell an investor what you get from a hedge fund is actually uncorrelated returns, where you get access to a return stream that's not easily available, that isn't tied necessarily to the return of the S&P 500, but it's not a better return stream. It's not a risk-free return stream. It's different. And by being different, it's sort of, if you look at the sort of correlation mathematics, it should overall give you a better risk-return trade-off. But
because you're trying to basically diversify out your risk.
Exactly. It just gives you diversification. So even it's like private equity and hedge funds, you might get a better return out of them, but what you should be aiming to get out of them is diversification from the easily available good returns that are available with a stock market investment.
I would expect that to go over a lot of people who barely understand the stock market. I expect some of that to go over people's heads, but those of you at home, if you understood that is a amazing kind of nugget of wisdom there. Because what people are looking for a lot of the times is some uncorrelated market. And it's so hard to get an uncorrelated rate of return a lot of times nowadays because markets are so highly correlated. Something that happens in America oftentimes will affect markets in China and stuff. And so people are constantly, if you're really in the market, you're looking for some sort of thing to diversify your risk away. And so that's really interesting. I personally did not know that. I've often wondered what is the like real draw to hedge funds. So that's something for me to take away.
If people are super interested in this, I have a playlist that's put up. I think it's called Applied Portfolio Management, and no one watches it on YouTube because it's about 6 1-hour videos. You know?
Because people don't actually want to learn the stock market. No. They just want to. They just want the hype of like, I'm a trader. They want to say I'm a trader. They want to say, I day trade. They want to say, I've got Forex life. They want to talk about the lifestyle. But nobody actually cares to understand anything. Nobody actually cares to actually go and research and do the work to understand what they so-called are investing in or are talking about.
Even like two of those 6 videos, they go through what hedge fund strategies are. And I kind of explain, like, okay, so merger arbitrage, when 2 companies are combining, there might be an opportunity. This is how it works. This is the return stream and so on. So if you're super interested in this stuff, you know, you can watch 6 to 12 hours of content on my channel that no one else watches. But
I love it. No, I love it. And that actually is a true taste of whether you like trading, because most people love the idea of trading. Again, just to be clear, but actually trading, most people wouldn't find it that interesting, because really good trading is a grind. It's oftentimes boring. It's oftentimes about finding something and then doing it over and over again. Yeah. Because once you find something, why would you?
It's repetitive. You know, there's another book I would recommend to people. There's this Edward Thorpe, A Man for All Markets. And he's a fascinating guy. He's the guy who kind of cracked blackjack, you know, all those blackjack systems back in the 60s. Then he turned to markets and found all these market efficiencies. So he wrote 2 books. Beat the Dealer was the gambling one. Beat Wall Street, I think, was the stock market one. Then this is sort of his life story. It's a great story, but like, you get the real feeling of what it is to be an investor reading. You know, another book, and now I'm just talking about books, but there's
no. This is what people need to hear. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, actually, what I would say is, if you want to learn how to make money, you can just read an awful lot of books. You know, work for Ty Lopez, and you know,
some of these jokes are really criminally underrated here. This is some good jokes. You're dropping some heat right now. This is good.
But there's a great book called Shoe Dog by, I think his name is Phil Knight, you know, the guy who founded Nike. And he describes like it's the best book I've read on like what it's like to run a business. And it's a grind. And he talks about like the toll it took on his family and dealing with bankers and dealing with suppliers who try and rip you off and all of the, like, you know what? Everyone wants all this money that people say is freely available. Everyone wants it, and they'll fight you to the death for it, you know? And so no one is going to give you these ideas because they want it for themselves. And equally, if there was something easy out there, someone else would grab it. Like, why would people make, we'll say, like a copy of a Louis Vuitton handbag and sell it if it's not profitable, right? So not only do you have to sort of have the product, but then someone will copy it and rip it off, and people will, you know, there's hundreds of, like, everyone is out to make the money that's out there because people need it, you know, people need to feed themselves, you know, and it's not easy, and it shouldn't be easy.
Very well said. Let's close this by talking. I like what you said. I like that you're bringing up books, because ultimately that's what I'm constantly preaching on the show. I'm like, you guys are buying $2,000 courses. You haven't even cracked your local library once. Yeah. I mean, are you kidding me? You say you want knowledge, but you've never gotten your library card out, or God forbid, spend $10, you know, on a Kindle book or something like that. So that is the way I see to most deep knowledge is I really see it in books. Even there are incredible, like obviously you're making great videos and stuff like that, but I think the best way to condense information is still in print. Yeah. I don't think videos quite crack the educational market, because I think video trends towards entertainment rather than information in a weird way, which is just a talk for another time. So I want you to recommend some books for people who actually are in this and they say, okay, I do still want to learn, but I maybe shouldn't follow these gurus. What should I do? What should I read?
I mean, firstly, there's a bunch, like George Soros, you know, one of the greatest traders ever, has written about 10 books. There's guys like Howard Marks wrote a really good book. It's called I can't. You know what I'll do? I'll, rather than me try and list from my faulty memory a bunch of books, I'll send you kind of like a reading list that you can stick on the bottom of your.
That sounds perfect. That sounds absolutely perfect. And people can find you at Patrick Boyle on YouTube. You have 5,000 subscribers, which is just insane to me. These idiots, these scammers have like millions of subscribers.
I'm going to photocopy some big wads of money and carry them around and wave them. And I think that's
it's just so insane. It drives me nuts. But if you actually care about finance, you want to learn, you're a really good resource. Where else do you have some other channels you like to follow that you think are good?
There's a really good, what is the guy called? It's, once again, let me email you, but there's a guy, it's called Donut something. He has this great channel, but I can't remember.
Oh, I think I've seen this guy.
I think he's out of Canada or something like that.
It's like, oh man.
It's like, yeah.
I know what you're talking about. It's like half donut, one donut finance or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
I know this guy. Oh shoot. He was talking.
It's high quality and it's also, it's little animation, like it's watchable and educational.
Absolutely. It's really making me frustrated not being able to find this guy, because I've also seen him and I also thought at the same time, I was like, oh, this is really good. Just send it to me. We'll get all the links up. Thank you so much for coming on, Patrick. I really appreciate it. And I think
it's a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you for clearing up the myths in the stock market and in day trading.